Although we always appreciate feedback, we ask that you please give us all your comments when you come up the first time. Anyone else who wishes to address council on this item? Seeing none, I've recorded, I heard at least 2 questions, and I think there may have been more. So I've got one that I think is first for our staff. I think it would rightly be to the Director of Engineering, but I don't see him this evening. So, oh, there. Okay. There was a question with respect to clarifying the comment in the report about the sewer enterprise boundary and the eligibility of another property on Glendenning.
Sorry, well, time to accommodate the Director of Engineering. I wasn't sure the question might be directed to me, actually.
Oh, I apologize. Then let's
what was the question? Sorry, I'm sorry.
The question was with respect to the eligibility of another property on Glendenning within the sewer enterprise boundary.
Without the plan in front of me, I believe Mr. Lukes is correct. That is the property to the south, and he is again correct that it is not addressed on Glendenning. But I would need to verify that actually by looking in the plan itself, the LNP, but I believe he is correct.
Thank you. The other question that I have is for the applicant, and that is with respect to consultation with the neighbors. One of your client's neighbors said that she hadn't heard about it until someone told her that this was coming to council, and so I wondered if you could just comment for us on your consultation with neighbors.
First of all, the owner of the property, Patty, who was up here, has had a discussion in the past with the neighbor.
Yeah.
Secondly, we did have a community meeting, and we did distribute by hand notices to that property, to Mrs. Metzner's property, and many others. And we had a community meeting. She did not attend. I did go to the community association. I believe the community association actually notifies the neighbors too, and she did not attend there. The sign's been up on the property for quite some time, and we would be happy to talk to her again at any time we would have been. So I can't speak for her ability or inability to be notified, but we have gone through a process to make sure people who wish to come and discuss it, we would certainly discuss it with them. We're not hiding from anything. So I just a final comment too. I got to say, I don't want to think that this is ALR land. This is not ALR land. To the south of this is R12, the same as this down Mount Douglas Crossroad is also R12 properly. This is within the urban containment boundary and can be done with gravity sewer. If there is anything we can do for traffic, if there is a traffic problem, we'd like the engineers to tell us, having said, and when we do our frontage improvements, we would do any improvement we could to assist with any traffic problems there may be at that intersection. Thank you.
Councillor Haynes has a question.
One of the things we've heard from the neighbour is her concern, a genuine concern, about the trees along the ring road. In your earlier statement, you went at length to talk about how you're going to take steps to protect those. Could you just speak more to that point?
Well, as you can see on the plan on the screen, those are the trees along the north property line because the lady who was concerned lives next door, and so those trees are the windrow as they exist today. We don't, our plan is to totally protect what's there.
And if I may, it's a question.
No, sorry, if I could just add one further thing. We have been asked by the Parks Department because there is an invasive species of vine going up the trees that affect the health of the trees, and we will be taking out the invasive species to improve the health of the trees in that area as well, as a recommendation from your Parks Department.
And as I look at that picture there, on the neighbour's property, are there also trees that are part of that windrow, or are they mostly on your client's property?
Gee, I can't speak for that. There's some right on there. I'm trying to let's just see if we have that. That's the neighbor's property. That's her house. You can see the peak of her house. So there may be some trees on her property, but I can't honestly answer that.
Thank you.
Other questions for the applicant?
Excuse me. I believe the trees are both properties, not, there are trees, her
So
trees and my trees on both sides, yes.
Thank you.
There are multiple. Thank you.
All right then, I will turn it over decision. Please, feel free. Not all at once.
I'd like to make one observation on the point that Ken made about cars and greenhouse gas. And we're hearing that. And it's interesting. When I talk now, because I'm interested in that space, 4 to 5 years out from now, where will we be with electric cars? Because if the greenhouse gas argument, the climate change argument is only linked to cars in these areas, and we start to look at the new battery technologies, the salt-to-air battery technology, I hear from some people who are in the yachting industry where space and size of battery and power ratios is a real driving force for these people who spend millions to live in a tiny space that floats around the water. Car batteries may be changing dramatically in the very near future, and the cost of electrical cars will be dropping. So it might be that 5, 6 years from now, we'll all be electric. Not all of us, but significant numbers, because of the imperative about climate change and greenhouse gases. So this doesn't address tonight's question exclusively, but it's on that topic of climate change. Thank you.
Councillor Bryce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So oftentimes we hear neighbors coming and saying, our neighborhood is special, and that's always good to hear. In this case, Glendenning is special. It is an amazing part of the municipality. And so, certainly as one member of council, I'm looking for compelling reasons to make changes to what is a very idyllic situation. And the presentation from Barry Lux, I think, was very compelling to me in a number of respects, indicating that the general neighborhood properties are opposed, that this provides a buffer between ALR and residential. And so I say to myself, okay, this is something that is going to have to make it through a rezoning process. I don't see it. I see there are obstacles here, and I don't want to foreclose anybody else's discussion, and then maybe things take off in a different direction, but at this stage of the game, I'm not convinced. I think to myself, oftentimes we're asked to look to a subdivided piece of property because the property in question is significantly larger than others in the neighborhood, and therefore it makes sense, and that it then becomes similar to the neighborhood. In this case, that argument can't be made. So I think that at this stage of the game, subject to what others have to say, I wouldn't be inclined to support the application.
Thank you, Councillor Weiss. I have Councillor Dermond, Sanders, Borgelin, Brown, and Mayor Outlaw.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. If a motion is put forward to call a public hearing on this item, I will not be supporting it. First of all, it isn't an ideal place to put further development. I find the section of the report that deals with climate change considerably less than compelling. It points out things like maintaining the existing urban forest, and as much as possible would preserve the carbon sink. Well, you preserve it even more by not putting anything in. And then you look in the next page over and it points out that impervious area would increase from 8% to 22%. That's definitely a bad thing from a climate change point of view. But I see a number of other things in the report that are presumed put forward as intended to be positive in terms of the climate change report. And it says proposed development includes sufficient area suitable for backyard gardening. And that does then go on to say, however, overhead tree canopy may limit gardening as a result of blocking sunlight. Well, yes, it would. That area is very unsuited for gardening, and to garden there, you'd have to cut down the trees, which would be less than desirable. Beyond that, it says grocery stores are located within walking, cycling distance. I beg your pardon? Grocery stores here are over 1 kilometer away. People are not going to walk 1 kilometer for their groceries. In a similar vein, it says that public transit exists on Cedar Hill Road and Mackenzie, both of which are either more than half a kilometer or close to 1 kilometer away. There are very few places inside the urban containment boundary where that is the case. And yet this is presented as a positive. These are all negatives that are things why council or others or anybody can still decide they think it's suitable or the reasons. But from a climate change point of view, this should not be presented as a positive approach to climate change. This is a negative approach to climate change, plain and simple. And that's what the information, in my view, that we should have in front of us. And other factors may determine that that is something that you decide to do the development anyhow. But I don't expect something that tells me this is positive for climate change. It isn't even close. I have some concerns about what has happened over the last years on the existing property. I very frequently cycle up the street on my way to Mount Duck Park for a hike or whatever, and have done for a number of years. And I have taken note of this particular property when I have gone through in that process and noted some of the problems that exist. Not sure I'm happy with the rationale for why those problems have existed over that extended period of time. But the biggest issue for me is, well, one of the biggest ones is, in fact, the nature of Glendanian itself. One speaker came up and talked about the potential for changing the integrity of the street. And I think that individual is exactly right. And it is indeed, as Councillor Bryson and members of the audience have said, it is a very special street. It is a very unique street. One that, if I had the opportunity, I would feel privileged to live in that kind of environment. And I would hope that at some point Council would take a look at that street and decide what kind of special provisions they should make to protect the integrity of that street. Because it is something unique within the municipality. So I can't support something that could be a first step in a process of significantly altering that street. I remember when I moved into the North Quadrant area, and shortly after, my wife and I walked up Rogers Avenue. And at the time, it was a fairly narrow street, heavily treed, with the Hutchison property and forest on one side and a farm on the other side. And you only had to go in about 25 meters and you felt like you were in the country. And it was remarkable. And then, as a result of some development being done, the decision was made to widen the street and put in a curb and gutter and so forth. Destroyed it. Just destroyed those values. And allowed cars, of course, to travel much faster down it than they would otherwise do, to the point that council started to get complaints about the speed of automobiles on the street. Of course, because you designed it to be speedy. So those things like Glendanian, they are unique gems, I think, that really need to be protected, preserved, and promoted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Durham. Councillor Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also feel very much the same way. When I look at this plan, and I'm always concerned about neighborhood consultation and stuff, and I read the plan and I see they had a neighborhood meeting in June of 2013. That's over 2 years ago. And maybe if there'd been something more current, maybe we would have had a different result from the public coming out. I also read the Gordon Head letter of support. Their first point is they have supported if there is evidence of support or non-objection from adjacent residents. Well, I didn't hear that tonight. I also read the Arborist report dated 2010, the tree plan of 2013. This is an old plan. It isn't current. I don't feel that they've communicated or looked at what the residents are considering at this point, if they're considering anything. So I won't be supporting it. I thought there were some positives in the essence if we were going to support this, that they would covenant the size of the dwelling to a smaller size, but then there's no designs. So for one hand, I see a positive, and on the other hand, I see a negative. So I won't be supporting this. I think this is a special place. I do believe the work hasn't been done to garner the support of the community or the communication with the community to have a sense. And then should we send this to a public hearing, I think that the larger community would come out as they would have greater knowledge, of course. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sanders. Councillor Wortman.
Thank you very much. This is not ALR land. It is within the urban containment boundary. And I guess I believe building one house next to agricultural land is not considered a major development. And with that, I'm not sure we need a major buffer next to agricultural land as we have here. I guess I also believe that almost any development, it changes a community. But that change doesn't necessarily have to be negative. It'll make a difference, but it doesn't have to be a negative. I believe I live in a unique cul-de-sac, if I could use that word. Would you believe this council just approved a 6-lot subdivision next to my home? But I still believe when it goes in, we will have a unique community in a different sort of way. And so what we have here tonight, I can support it. And I do support what has been presented. Coming back to this development, I don't believe it has an impact on the adjacent neighbors. Yes, they'll see another house across the way, but I don't believe that it will have an impact. And I guess I'm not concerned about, will the present owner live there? Will another family live there? I don't think that's an issue. We're talking about another house being put into the community, and I really don't believe it's going to impact it. Coming back to climate change and the issues or the concerns that some of us have over that with a house like this going in, like has been said, our mode of transportation will continue to change. 20 years down the road, we'll probably smile at the way we travel today if we're still here. And imagine people driving down to Tim Hortons in their car. Imagine 20 years down the road, someone walking a kilometer to go to a grocery store, or biking 2 kilometers. Times will change, and part of what we need to do is believe that modes of transportation will change. But we also have to accept the fact that families are going to be moving into our community, and there are places where they can build, and I believe this is one of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wortman. Councillor McGrath. Your turn.
It's like musical microphones. Oh, it's the lights, okay? I'll believe that.
That's a good answer.
So I just want to say, you know, I was out there today, and this lot, one of the issues for me is safety. And the reason I say that is because of the corner. There was some comment from a gentleman about perhaps looking at a roundabout. The speeding that happens along Mount Doug Crossroad, like I pulled into this driveway and I was fearful of trying to get back out because of the curve on Mount Doug and the speed that cars go around that corner. They don't necessarily go up Glendinning, but there is a uniqueness about this corner. I think it's unfortunate that the property owner did not maintain the property. You buy a piece of property, you become the new neighbor in the community, and you rent it out, and that's fine. But there's also obligations as a property owner to ensure that the immediate neighbors and stuff aren't impacted. The lot itself, although there can be some case around a panhandle, I don't believe a panhandle in this area of Glendinning, at the start of Glendinning, is supportable. And I also think that, like some of my colleagues would have said, there are some things that were done a while ago. There should have been some refresher of the information. I don't want to tear apart the staff report because that's not what I like to do, but even the idea of the proposal of one new residential area would improve safety in the neighborhood by enhancing passive surveillance. I found that interesting, but all in all, I think that this is the start of Glendenning. I think this is a unique road. I don't think that more development or panhandle in this particular instance is supportable, but none of my council have finished speaking or motion on the floor, so I'll just wait. But I wouldn't support this going forward to rezoning. I just don't support the panhandle on this lot. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Brahma. Mayor Atwell.
Great, thank you, Chair. Having looked at the report and listened to the people in the audience, I think I'm similar in mind to Councilor Coleman in supporting that this goes to public hearing. We've heard from a lot of people and we've received a few letters, but we've really had the full body of discussion that would come through the public hearing format. To stall this now at this stage, I feel personally is a little bit premature if it comes out in the public hearing. Otherwise, I think we can make an informed decision. We have information here, and there's a little bit of debate as to what's important and what's not. It's indeed a special road, that's for sure. The number of lots that are there and the size of the lots. But where exactly does the road begin? And where does it end? For me, when you're walking down the road, it begins where the sign begins. But it also begins where the urban containment boundary begins. And if we are to be successful in this community, we do have to establish some standards. And the urban containment boundary has been with us for a long time and has template for where development occurs and where development can occur. We have very few places left in Saanich where single-family homes can be built. And so we're often looking at infill and often looking at subdividing lots to provide homes and people an opportunity to live in Greater Saanich. Just earlier tonight we were talking about community amenities and providing certainty for development. Again, I feel this is something that we need to move forward on, and if we don't look at the urban containment boundary as a strict guideline for us, then maybe we need to revisit that boundary and decide where it really should go, because it is where it is and it's been that way for a long time. So I just throw that out there. When it comes to subdividing this lot and adding another home to the area, this neighborhood is going to undergo change probably. The Albert property at 1860 Mount Duck Cross Road is going to likely, if the ALC passes it back to us, provide 16 homes in this neighborhood. There's a tree planting proposal that's part of that development that will enhance that, much in the same way the trees on this property will be rotated. The climate change issue is one that comes up on council quite often, and it's one I kind of wrestle with because I'm kind of trying to predict the future myself. I wrote a letter to Times College many, many years ago in response to another letter, and the comments were such that I thought that the car was a very, very useful conveyance that wasn't going to go away, but it was the internal combustion engine that was going to go away. And so we really don't know how many years we're going to be looking at that, and how long it's going to take to electrify the grid, and when we're going to need substantial change. So in the meantime, in my life and in my mind, the best means of dealing with that is to convert to the bicycle as much as we can. Gailey Farm, Rona Farm, and some of the other shopping centers are easily within walking distance. And years ago, I was living in Texas, and I made the attempt of walking to the grocery store to take my groceries back. It was difficult. It was difficult to lug them back. But on a bicycle, carrier on the back, it's not so hard. So the climate change issue for me is that this home is an area where you can access food. One of the stores that we visit quite often. So for me, it's not so much an obstacle. So I would like to support this going to public hearing so that we can hear similar comments and others that we haven't heard today, and fully weigh on this problem. That's what I'd like to see. Thank you.
Okay, council, you know how this works. I'm going to need a motion one way or the other. Councilor Plant?
Thank you, Chair. I will move this to public hearing and then speak to it if there's a seconder.
Go for it.
Thank you. I think I'm not ready to make a decision. I concur with the Mayor. I certainly appreciate what's been said tonight. I'm very influenced by what's said tonight. I just would like to hear more. I think that the fact that this is the last property inside the urban containment boundary makes a difference to me. And that makes me want to know more. Certainly, I'm not afraid of Creek going to the north because those are large properties outside the urban containment boundary. I think Mr. Mayor's comments about the fact that there's going to be significant change just to the east where the Albert property is located is also of relevance. I do take into effect, though, into thought, though, that it's very possible this public hearing, it's not going to go well. So I would encourage the applicant to do some consultation with the neighbors to see what could be potentially done to get them on side, because I don't know if it would go certainly very well right now, but I do think it should go to a public hearing so we can have that discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Plant. Councillor Haynes.
This is a very interesting application. Clearly, Glendenning is a very special place. I have driven out there and I went around there just recently. It is troubling when an owner doesn't maintain their property, but we're not judging them on if they maintained a rental property, although I understand that point. There is respect, I feel, for the official community plan and for the urban containment boundary. This house is inside, this lot is inside the urban containment boundary, and this type of development, this type of rezoning is within our local area plan for that area. So in respect of those two documents, I would support this going forward to public hearing for greater debate. We've heard today, it may struggle at that process, but I think given the OCP and the LAP, this deserves to go forward and for more discussion. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further comments, before I call the question, I'll just add my own comments. I won't be supporting this moving to a public hearing. I'm supportive of the comments from a number of my colleagues and from Mr. Lukes with respect to buffering the ALR lands in this area. I take the point that we do have an urban containment boundary for a reason. But I don't think that means that you build right up to it. I think that we need to be respectful of the impact that that has on the use just on the other side of that line. And we know that when it comes to a conflict between a residential development and farm practices, it's often not the farm that wins. So I don't want to see that potential unlocked at this point. I think that this is a beautiful part of the world. There's an awful lot of places that make more sense for density that I would be very supportive of seeing more development, but for me this is not one of them. So I'm going to call the question on moving this to a public hearing. Those in favor? Mayor Atwell, Councillor Plant, Councillor Haynes, and Councillor Wertman. And those opposed? Councillor Sanders, Councillor Bryce, Councillor Dermott, Councillor Brown, and myself. That fails. In that case, I will need a motion to reject. On the motion, council, those in favor? Those opposed? That's Mayor Atwell, Councillor Plant, Councillor Haynes, and Councillor Wertman opposed. That motion passes. Just give everybody a chance to put pen to paper for a minute. And then we will move on to item number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This next item is the permissive tax exemptions. The report of the Director of Finance is recommending that Council direct staff to conduct the statutory notification for the 2016-2019 permissive tax exemptions.
before we get there, I will talk to the public to give us the benefit of their feedback. But before I get to that, I'm going to ask Ms. Tinney if there's anything she'd like to add to the content.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing further to add.
Thank you. All right then, those who've had a chance to have a look at it, I encourage you to come forward and give us the benefit of your comments. Name, address, and up to 5 minutes. Anyone? All right, seeing none. Councillor Haynes, do you want to make that motion you were contemplating earlier? No. I think that's only a vote. That's okay. There's a seconder on that one, okay. Would anyone like to speak to it? Okay. Councillor Russo, moved by Councillor Haynes and seconded by Councillor Workman. If there's no discussion on the motion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. There you go. Look at that. We're going to get a good mix tonight, I think.
It's very good, thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This next item is the Cuthbert Homes Tillicum Park Management Plan. The report of the Director of Parks and Recreation is recommending the Council endorse the Cuthbert Homes Parks Management Plan. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Now this one I know someone's going to want to speak to. We've got a strong front bench and I